What's up YouTube? My name is Ruff and today I'm going to show you how to make your plug-in guitars more realistic and go from this to this. So diving right into the project, let's go over this non-realistic one first so I can explain to you why it doesn't sound as good as the other one. So if we go into the MIDI here, you'll see that everything is perfectly on the grid. There's no velocity changes, everything's quantized, so that's why everything sounds so fake. Because a real human guitar player would not hit every single note so perfectly at the same exact velocity across the entire pattern. So if we go to the realistic one and open up the MIDI, and if we open up the velocity, you'll see here that all of the different notes are scattered across the velocity map here, which gives each individual note a different kind of like hardness that it's being hit by the fake guitar pick. So if you see here, this one right here would be getting hit harder than this one. Getting the right velocity across the entire guitar pattern is probably the most important factor when getting it to sound realistic, because that's the most realistic part. That's what differentiates a human guitar player from a computer, is that a human's not going to be perfect. Which leads me to my next point. If we look at the notes on the grid, I'm going to go to a narrow grid. You'll see how not everything is perfectly on the grid. What I'll do is I'll zoom in all the way and just nudge things left and right at random, because that gives you a feeling of, okay, this one's a little off, this note's a little off. So you see this bass note starts here, then this here, and nothing's on the grid perfectly whatsoever. So playing this, and that gives you a very realistic feeling from the start before any processing. So now let's go into the processing of the realistic one, and we're gonna turn on each plugin one by one and explain what they do. So we have this saturator from Ableton on the A Bit Warmer setting, which is just a sine wave with some drive. So with the saturator on, with it off. So what saturation essentially is when they used to record everything with hardware gear. When there's too much fed into the input, it gave it this warm feeling. So a digital analog is gonna recreate that and make it feel like it was recorded through something hardware or analog, like an amp or a preamp or whatever. Then we have a low cut here, just to take out some of those low frequencies to make room for any basses or subs that we wanna put in there. But now this is where the real sauce comes in. So we're gonna open up RC20 here. I have it on the Lush and Crunch guitar setting, and from there what I did is jacked up the distortion halfway and then jacked up the space halfway and played with the decay and the type of distortion to give it a crunchier feeling, as well as put it in a room. Because if you're recording a guitar live, you're not gonna just record it and it's gonna sound like dry. There's gonna be reverb from the room you're recording in, reverb from whatever hardware gear you're sending it into. So that's where this space comes in, and the distortion is supposed to mimic that amp and that distortion that gets fed through the hardware as well. So with the RC20 on now, and if we turn it off, then we have Micro Shift by Soundtoys. So when I turn that on, and what that's doing, if we open it up, is we have it pretty much like 25% dry wet. We have it on the second style, and the detune and delay are in the middle. And what this Micro Shift is really doing, with the goal of it, is to give a slight detune and make the guitar seem like it's not perfectly tuned, because in reality, while a lot of guitar players in real life are very particular about their guitar being totally in tune, if it's a little detuned when you're making something digital, it'll give the listener that feeling of, oh, maybe this is a real guitar because it's not so perfect like everything that's digital with VSTs is. So that's why we have the Micro Shift on there, just to give a little bit of detune. So to play it again, with it off. So then next we have an Ableton stock echo that's being parallel sent here, and I have the wet setting at -18 decibels. It's an eighth note echo, but where the real sauce comes in is in this character knob. So if we go to the character knob, it's not crazy. Look how minimal it is. But when you turn on noise and wobble and turn it up to taste on the amount, it gives the noise gives you a little bit of vinyl crackle, and the wobble quite literally gives it a little wobble, and that just again adds to the more realistic feeling of this is recorded through some hardware gear that's like maybe a little off, maybe it added a little noise or wobble across the way. Now with the echo on, with it off, so just adding a little tiny bit of echo. Now we're gonna get to Portal by Output. Let's open this up here. And it's very minimal. It's on like 5% wet on this dreamy music box setting. So if I turn it 100% wet so you can hear what it totally sounds like. So it just gives a weird granular character, but when it's turned up all the way, it doesn't even sound like a guitar. So that's why we have it on about 10 on the dry wet knob, just to add like a little bit of texture. This is not essential whatsoever, but I just like to toss Portal by Output on a lot of my stuff just to give weird granular textures that you can't really get from stock plugins. So with Portal on, it sounds like this. If I turn it off. And last but not least, we have Soothe. And this is just on the fitting guitar setting, and then I just kind of played around with where I want it to go from there. So if I turn on Delta, which is gonna solo what the Soothe is dynamically EQing, I really just have it down in these low mids here, because that's where a lot of the like nasty frequencies on this guitar came from because of what key it's in and the processing I had on before Soothe. And then what I would typically do after all of this processing on the individual guitar is put it in a group with the same exact one duplicated, and I would pan them hard right and hard left, and then on the entire group do 2 more EQs. So I would do just a low cut on everything on the sides up to probably with this like 250 hertz. So everything from 250 hertz and below is gonna be mono. Everything from 250 hertz and above would be stereo. Then I would add another EQ that would just be finding the nasty frequencies and turning them down with a dynamic bell EQ. So it's not gonna be turned down all the time, just when the threshold of those frequencies hits whatever I've set the dynamic EQ to. So one more time, let's listen to the non-realistic guitar with no processing, no velocity or MIDI changes. And now let's listen to the realistic one with all the processing and MIDI and velocity changes. Cool, so I just wanted to give a quick shout out. This is not a sponsored video, but the guitar plugin that I used for this is Electric Sunburst Deluxe from Kontakt. So if you don't have Kontakt yet and you're looking to get a realistic guitar plugin, can't go wrong with Kontakt. Again, I'm not sponsored. It would be cool if I was, but that's all for this video. I'll catch you on Wednesday at 4 p.m. East.